everybody. Chris Gleason, Arts and Creativity Consultant with the Department of Public Instruction. And today we have our visual artist, author who wrote these amazing lesson plans, Devon Calvert. Nice to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for writing these amazing lesson plans. Now, before we dive into the lesson plans, tell us a little bit about you.
So my name is Devon Calvert. I teach for the school district of Milton. I split my time between two buildings at Harmony and Consolidated. They are both K-3 elementary schools, so I get the real littles. See my kids once every 3 days for 45 minutes, so I'm pretty fortunate that I get to see them pretty often. Lots of art history, lots of contemporary art used within my curriculum.
You wrote some terrific lesson plans based on our project here, of connection and so on. Can you give us kind of just an overview of the lessons that you created?
So I did kind of a 3-day project for each grade band. I wanted to do something that was collage based because I feel like this collage has a lot of different routes I feel like you can go with. I said it takes place over 3 days. The first day was creating the background. So I had the elementary and the high school create a wet on wet watercolor background with like a wax resist, or for the high school, I had them use colored pencils so they get better detail. And then the middle school, I had them do a blended acrylic background instead. Actually, originally I had the high schoolers creating the acrylic background. But after like walking through and making the project, I felt that there was more detail with the colored pencils, so I went that route instead. So I ended up switching my projects actually like at the last minute. Once they have that background created, then they layer different collage elements such as construction paper or cardboard or magazines to create that sense of depth with the foliage and trees. And then the last day was all about creating that bird that's kind of symbolizes their voice or their expression. The lower elementary, lots of like sequins and feathers and bees and all those fun things. And then the high school, more probably like using different kinds of materials to create textures. So just kind of scaling it and letting it build upon itself and starting with kind of these more basic techniques and getting more advanced as they get older.
Yeah, and it is brilliant. And folks, when you get a chance to see the plan itself, you'll see, like you really do a great job of articulating the different techniques in the layers, and as I saw the example too, which we love is to see an example of this too, of the layers that are presented. Talk about the meaning. Like you really were intentional about having students explore, how these different birds might represent things. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so this year's theme was connected or connection. So I really wanted them to connect like emotionally with how the poem made them feel and use that largely as the bird. The bird is supposed to kind of represent their emotion that they wanted to portray, whether it was through the textures that they used or the colors that they chose to use. At the elementary levels too, we created like the bird was singing. So we had some yarn that kind of came out of the bird's mouth. So thinking about what colors might represent different songs or moods to songs. So what kind of yarn would you want to use? What thicknesses of yarns would you want to use? What textures of yarns? Things like that. So really kind of connecting with their emotions. And then also obviously connecting there's lots of like very visual lines throughout the poem. Talking about like forests and the yellow birds. So obviously the literal connection is kind of what the basis of our whole project was. And then really just that whole connection, the project as it's like the whole DPI project, this connection between poetry and visual media and poetry and music and poetry and theater. It's really cool. I've never heard of anything like that.
Yeah, well, it shows, the not only our connection to each other, but about concepts too, bigger concepts and so on. Let's talk just for a moment about, are there any suggestions that you would have, having, certainly done these lesson plans and have done these projects and so on? Are there any tips or tricks that you would offer?
Well, I always say make the project ahead of time because that's how you work out kinks, like I found out. You could probably add another day to this as well. Like once you're like into like the collaging aspect of it, I could see that taking up a lot of time. I feel like especially at the like middle school, high school, it's really like a choose your own adventure after the backgrounds are made. I would just say like lots and lots of different materials to choose from, fabrics, obviously provide like resources for them to look at for birds and things like that. But really, I just left it about as open-ended as I could.
Yeah, I love it. And you really did a nice job too about talking through the poem, like to really kind of understand the concept of that as well. And we have the author, the poet, who kind of helps to break down the meaning, because it's rich, it's
Mhm.
dense, and so on. Um, would you recommend showing that video, or how would you recommend kids to unpack all that word,
Yeah,
symbology and so on?
I think definitely for middle school, high school, they would be able to watch that. Elementary, it might be the ideas might be a little bit larger. So I would probably recommend more so maybe reading that with students, and then kind of breaking it down, having a conversation, which obviously you would do with the upper grades as well. Maybe pulling some snippets from that video. But I think a lot of that gets a little heady for maybe especially like the K3 band. Like I can imagine that would be tough for my students to kind of understand all of that. But yeah, probably reading through it a couple times, really breaking it down. What's he trying to say with this line? Things like that.
And with any lesson plan, you got to make it your own. So, are you okay with others out there like taking your ideas and manipulate them to fit their own situation?
Oh, totally. I tell teachers all the time, beg, borrow, steal, just survive.
That's right.
You do what you need to do to make that lesson work.
That's exactly right. I love it. So, how did this poem and this concept kind of resonate with you personally?
Well, it had a lot to do with nature. I love nature. Actually, just got back from a backpacking trip. So kind of finding that, I don't know, that solitude. There's some kind of line. I had it written down somewhere. Oh, be still enough to listen. I thought was a really great line. I'm kind of fostering that, like that self-awareness. That was probably my favorite line. Just that a lot of it's so based on nature, being out there by yourself, things like that.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. And one last question, and this is looking a little bit ahead to your learners coming up this year. Why would this kind of concept of connection be important for your learners?
Feel like connection. It has this ripple effect. Like I feel like so many students feel like they're alone, but if you have that connection, you have that community or that family, you feel safer. So many people I think feel alone. If you can make a connection with one person, that connection leads to other connections. Um, yeah, something along those lines.
That's fine. No, we're glad we made the connection with you. This is a brilliant work, and we really appreciate your time and effort and creativity.
Thank you.